it becomes part of the template. So in those early relationships, we develop those templates for what to expect from all future relationships. And so anything that's painful is going to be laid down as a potential. That's when you don't go for, this stuff online about sort of affirmations that you might not believe in. I am strong, I am lovable, I am fantastic. And that might give you a little hit in the moment, but it's not going to last if you don't already believe it. When we're willing to acknowledge, whoop, had a moment, and here comes the repair that feels kind of excruciating to begin with, but ends in a better connection. And you can do those repairs with kids or partners or yourself.
Dr. Julie, how lovely to see you after quite a few years now.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
You last came on the pod in 2023.
Yeah.
Mad. And literally, it's just gone like that.
I can't believe it's been that long.
Where's time going?
We've just been having our heads down, scurrying along.
I mean, you've been incredibly busy, and so much has happened since I saw you last in all different shapes and sizes. Yeah. One thing that's happened is your book and your message has just continued to blow up further and further. I've seen you on so many big global US podcasts recently, and your message just keeps spreading. Your books just keep selling. What's that process been like for you? Because I know also you're quite a shy person, so it's a lot.
It's sort of exciting and terrifying all in the same kind of thing, really. It's sort of you never imagine it for yourself. You never imagine that anything like that's going to happen. And I had a thought about that on the train on the way here, actually, because I was holding my book and then I became aware of people on the train, and
she's holding her own book.
Whether people would realise, and I thought, I remember back to being a kid. If when I was reading kind of self-helpy type books, or sort of as a teenager, if I'd have known then, or if someone had said to me, you're going to write one of those in the future, I would never have believed it. So
but it's so brilliant.
But yeah, I mean, it's all good. And do you know when I go to these sort of big live events and things, and there's people there that say, it's helped me in this way, or that chapter changed things for me, then it's just that sort of the reminder really of why I'm doing it and why I started in the first place, and that it's worthwhile. And so
because it's quite an abstract thing, like even if I'm doing this podcast, we're in a boxed off room on our own, we don't know what the reaction is. You hope that people are going to receive whatever you're saying or writing, and it's going to impact them positively, but you don't entirely know. So I think those little one-on-one interactions of people stopping you in the street or even DMing you. But I think when it is in person, you're like, oh my God, this is actually people are reading this book or your books, and it's doing something positive. Yeah,
because I think when you're recording or you're making content, it's not a conversation, is it? It's you talking into a camera, kind of pretending it's a person, and it's actually quite a sort of lonely existence in some ways. I'll do the school drop off in the morning, and it's just me at home by myself all day, and then
with various bowls of rice and coloured water.
Or just my computer and my cat or something, and it's sort of and so it's a real kind of you can almost forget that people are watching sometimes, or someone sort of calls you in the street and you think, oh my God, people actually saw that video, how embarrassing.
How embarrassing, but brilliant, because we need more positive content out there. We just do. We need stuff that is going to be truly helpful, and your videos have helped me so much over the years, as have your books. But it's a funny thing when your work starts to blow up like that. And I remember, I can't think how long ago this was, but that first TED talk that Brené Brown put out about shame, and then she put out a subsequent one not that long after, talking about the reaction to the blow up of the first video, and saying that she actually felt shame and kind of had to readdress the whole thing because it was so huge. And when you've got numbers like you have, watching your videos, reading your books, there is sort of a level of, I guess, responsibility, but also just, I don't know, maybe overwhelm. It's a lot. It's a lot of people. Have you experienced that? You've just thought, oh my God, this is actually all a bit too much.
Yeah, hugely. And where I had a small, simple, insular life, where I had my really small practice, it was just me, control over my time with the family and everything. I was confident that I knew I was good at what I was doing, but I was in that place where probably wasn't overly challenging myself until I was doing this stuff. And then I was well out of my comfort zone. And so I had to use what I was preaching and actually test the stuff and make sure, does this work? And, because I was actually having to use a lot of the skills myself, or I would then, reread old books and it would feel completely different because suddenly I was in the deep end and I was sort of really, just outside of my comfort zone. And so in some ways it was great, it was a great test of does this stuff actually work? And which bits work for me and which don't.
Without a doubt. Yeah. How important do you think it is for us to step outside of our comfort zone? I think that, 90% of my job pushes me outside my comfort zone. Every time I have, this sort of situation where I'm interviewing somebody or I'm doing radio or whatever, I'm forced to have opinions, hopefully have a thoughtful conversation that flows and that people really like, which is, I guess, a bit of a vulnerable place to be because you're putting yourself out there and, you want to have a high standard of content that you're making, but you never quite know if you're hitting the mark. All of it feels a bit scary, but not enough to stop me. I do love it. There are certainly things that could push me. I don't know, stepping really outside of it would be for me doing live TV again. I don't feel like I'm anywhere near wanting to do that. But what is that? Like, what's the precipice where we go, oh no, and that's too far? And how do we know?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually, because I kind of think, I've been reading your book and
oh God, thank you.
Which I love, by the way. I'm not finished yet, but I'm just loving that personal story because partly, I relate to a lot of it. And I think a lot of people will, because there's that sense of, these are things that a lot of girls particularly, I think, struggle with and challenges that we work through. And as we age, I think we find our ways around it, or we find ways to connect. But it's different because, I've had that experience where I guess you've been in the public eye since, 16? Before 16 maybe? Yeah. Whereas I have had that very private, simple life and then been thrust into this stuff. I noticed how in that kind of sort of more private life, I felt like a confident person. I felt like I was happy with who I was. Everything was okay. Just by being more public, it sort of threw all of that up in the air in some ways. And things that I felt like I was comfortable with, or parts of myself that I hadn't even thought to worry about, suddenly became magnified, or things that is that enough? Or do I look right? Do I sound right? Do I know enough? All of these. So as soon as you feel exposed and public in front of people you don't even know, it changes all of that stuff, doesn't it? And it magnifies any tiny insecurity you may have, and it forces you to then do the work to think about, why is that there, and does it matter, and how do I get around it? Do I just relentlessly try to be more and more perfect, or can I come to a place where I'm okay with being imperfect and anticipating the judgment that might come from it? And
that's such a big one. I think it's such a big one for everybody to, all of us have got flaws and issues and a backstory and have made mistakes, all of us. We don't believe that about other people, I guess, a lot of the time. We think, oh, they're nailing it. They're just doing so well. Or even if it's in a sort of competitive sense with work, they're doing better than me or whatever. Everybody is lugging around some shit. Yeah. And I think, I certainly tried to tackle that in my book, Likeable, assuming that if I were perfect, not only expressing perfection to other people, but if I somehow felt like, and I've done everything I can to be perfect, then people will like me. And obviously, there's no such thing for a start. It's exhausting. And actually, the best way of tackling it is to become comfortable with the things that, that's a weakness of mine. That's, not my strength, or something that is, a particularly sort of shiny part of my existence. And also, these are the places and the times where I've really messed up, and it's all right. But it's quite hard to get there. What's been your own sort of journey with having acceptance around the parts of yourself or your life that you don't like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when it comes to the content and making content, I realised that there was a specific moment actually when there was some video that had loads and loads of comments in it, and I was scrolling through the comments and I was skimming past all these lovely comments.
Where's the shitty one?
Yeah, I realised I'm looking for anyone who's not okay with me or what I've said, and it was just this moment of awareness where I had to go, no,
and
stop.
we're done.
Yeah. No more scanning through sort of comments and stuff like that. That's enough. And so as a result, I now don't often spend much time in that kind of area or, responding to those kind of things.
What is that? Is that because I've done that many a time? And I know other people will have, and people outside of the public eye will have done that on a level. Are we going, I need to see if there's some shitty comments here because they've seen through the act, or we're looking for the bit where maybe we've given the game away, like we've shown the bad part that we didn't want to. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, and if you have any kind of sort of core beliefs around not being enough in any way, which most of us has something along those lines, then the fear is someone is going to spot that or something about it and vocalize that, in the comments or whatever. And so you're looking for the person who's going to say the thing that you most want to hide or you most don't want people to say. And then it reconfirms that belief. And so it's so distressing when it happens.
Yeah.
And so for me, when it comes to the content stuff, I would deliberately not spend time doing that stuff, but also I kind of had to reassess, why am I doing this? I'm not doing it for social validation. I'm not doing it to gain friends. I'm doing it to help some people.
Yeah.
And I had to keep coming back to that thread of, because it happens all the time, right? You make a video and then, my husband who kind of edits everything will go, oh, do you like this? And as he's playing it back, what he wants me to do is read the captions to make sure there's no spelling mistakes or anything. And I haven't even heard a word that's in the video because I'm looking at some bit of hair that's sticking out and, oh no, did I look like that? Or, oh, my makeup's really terrible. Or, and you're just fixating on these little things that, and you haven't kind of seen so I spend very little time looking at that stuff. I have to go with the sense of, okay, there was a reason behind the video. If I know it has a thread of value that I know someone else has found helpful before, that's enough. It's got to go out there because I'm not here to be, a model or a perfect speaker or I just got to get that message out.
Yeah. I mean, looking even outside of making content, for anyone who's listening to this who maybe finds getting feedback difficult, or even somebody complaining, like, I don't know, it could be a friend having an issue with you or a neighbour's complained about something, whatever it might be, that can be a tricky or an awkward or very confronting thing to deal with. I mean, again, when I was doing the publicity for this book, I decided, I was by no means forced into this, to read some mean tweets about me.
Okay.
And they were quite personal and I was sort of dreading it, but I thought this is going to be an interesting exercise because once I've read them, I've read them and I will realise I'm just sat here still and I'm fine. So I read them privately at first at home, read through them, I was like, oh Christ, that hurt. Fuck, you're sort of like the blow of it.
Yeah.
And then I did it again on camera and I was one step removed and I was like, okay, I actually can see the funny side of some of these. And I think it was like exposure therapy. Like by the end of it, I was like, it doesn't matter. It's just someone's passing thought, but they happen to write it down. I don't need to believe that as fact. And I think that's the issue. When I've had it in the past, I found getting critical feedback tricky, or even someone confronting me or saying something, that's just feels full on or like a bit of a personal moment. I found that very difficult because I've instantly turned on myself like, yeah, they're right and I'm wrong. They're right and I've got this all wrong and I'm a big mess or whatever it might be, or I'm shit, I'm going to give up. I've taken it way, way too seriously and way too far. What would your advice be for sort of being able to receive any kind of feedback or critique at work or within friendship circles or families and not turn on yourself, essentially?
Yeah, well, it's interesting actually because there's a nice bit of overlap between our books in a sense that you've got that sort of personal experience, and something I sort of talk about in Open When, but also in my first book is this idea that when something like that happens, the reason it stings so badly is often because it's triggering a memory of something that hurt really badly. Things that we don't think about, memories we don't necessarily even have access to.
In childhood or just at any time?
Yeah. So, we all have a core need to be connected, right? To have that relationship with our caregivers. And any sign that is inconsistent or not reliable or not available, or we're not reassured that it's going to continue to be available. So, that can encompass a whole range of different childhood experiences, triggers off such a huge threat response in any child's mind that it becomes part of the template. So in those early relationships, we develop those templates for what to expect from all future relationships. And so anything that's painful is going to be laid down as a potential. And so then, we get into adulthood. And even though logically we know better, and, I could live without that person who's making those comments, but feeling that sense of be it rejection or judgment or humiliation, all of those things, your brain doesn't only take information about what's happening now, it uses past information to help make sense of what's happening now. So it triggers the pain that you would have felt before, so it's really intense and really powerful, and we're in it. And like you said, that one of the best things you did was to slightly remove yourself from it and to kind of see it from the outside. And that's a lot of what happens in therapy is, you look back at something and then what we would call kind of diffuse from it. So instead of being in it and saying, I'm feeling shame and stuff like that, you might kind of use language, for example, to say, I notice I had the experience of whatever the feelings were. Even just through language like that, you're just creating a slight gap between you and the thing.
I am. Yeah. I am like fully embodied this thing. I am ashamed. Yeah. I am angry.
Yeah. So it becomes, instead of it being you, it's an experience that's washing over you.
Yeah.
Which then implicitly implies that this, it's temporary, it's something that's happening, but it will pass. And so you can kind of get that bit of distance, but also just through doing the work of recognizing, where did this come from? Where did this wound come from? Once you have that work in place and you understand, the different patterns that were developed early in life that keep playing out for you, then you can see it all from a bird's eye view. So the details of it are different every time. So it might be a comment online or a friend or someone shouting something in the street, but if you can see that every time the cycle is the same, there's some sign of negativity and I'm back to where I was before, and then I have the same coping strategies that I always have, which actually make things worse, and and so that cycle is the same every time. So that kind of, that formulation, that kind of literally writing things out on a piece of paper in therapy helps you to kind of see it from a bird's eye view. And that's another separation again, where and when you become more familiar with that, and you can do things like that through journaling and self-reflection, but what it does is it means that you first look at it in hindsight. So, that happened last week and I need to go through it. But when you do that enough, you start to notice the cycle when you're in it.
Yeah.
So, a comment online and you're feeling the pain and you're noticing the coping strategy, whatever that might be, but you're also remembering the map of the formulation of, okay, now I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I know where this has come from. And I know that if instead of doing this thing that makes it worse, I actually go and meet my needs right now, then things turn out different. And so, that's where the exits start to, but it's a whole piece of work. It's not a quick fix.
No, because these habits and I guess those moments where we know we're falling into the same habitual cycle again and again is so deeply ingrained. If most of it's set in childhood, which sort of scares the shit out of me, because as a parent, you're a parent, like I sometimes worry about my every move, like, oh my God, that's going to have totally messed them up for adult life, or are they going to think this because of that? And, you can totally send yourself mad worrying about it. But it is so deeply ingrained in all of us. Is it possible for everybody to break those cycles?
Yeah, change is absolutely possible. And actually, it's interesting, isn't it, that we're with that scenario of, your own parenting, for example, when you know that there are certain cycles that you live out because of your own childhood experience, being aware of it is painful. But if we're willing to experience that pain, then we're able to change it. But if we're not willing to go there, then we just live out the same cycles without any chance of change because it's so automatic, right?
Yeah.
And I had that myself, where I recognize my own tendency to, I'm probably more of like an avoidant attachment style. And I will, give lots of love through duty. So I will get that dinner done and I will clean up and I will make sure everyone's got their uniforms for the next day. But because I'm aware of my tendency to prioritize those things, I am able to say, oh, stop. Yeah, my daughter's trying to get my attention while I'm cooking. Maybe I can put this stuff down for a minute and just have the fun.
Yeah.
And just show the affection. And so it's only, it's painful to recognize that imperfection and to see it in the moment. Oh, I know what I'm doing. But it's only through being willing to have that pain and have that experience that I'm able to then break the cycle in the moment. But it means acknowledging that, I'm imperfect because of various experiences, and therefore I need to be brave and face those.
Yeah.
Those moments.
Parenting's going to do that. I had it last night where I was doing a cycle and I knew I was doing it. The TV wouldn't work and it was like 8 o'clock at night, and I promised my daughter that we would finish watching Mean Girls because we'd started it the week before. And I thought, that's going to be lovely. I've had the busiest day at work. This is going to be my moment just to like switch off for a minute. Wouldn't fucking work. And I had a tantrum. I was like, nothing works in this house and nothing works in my life. This has been the worst day ever. And I was like, why am I doing it? I know I'm doing it. I was so aware in the moment that I was doing it. The only way I could turn it around was just to go, really sorry that I had a tantrum and I'm just really tired. And that's where I'm at today. And that's my like first step into the humbling notion of like making that change in that habit, because we're all so hardwired to just do the thing that actually doesn't help us out in the long run.
Yeah, and those moments of repair are so life-changing. If when we're willing to acknowledge, whoop, had a moment, and here comes the repair that feels kind of excruciating to begin with, but ends in a better connection. And you can do those repairs with kids or partners or yourself. When you have the moments where you give into a whim that isn't in your best interests, or you give into a coping strategy that's old and it doesn't work for you. You could then respond by hammering yourself with shame and criticism. Why am I still doing that kind of? Or you could come back with sort of compassion and recognition that actually this is really tough. That's why I'm going around that cycle again. But I know where I'm at, and saying the things that you would say to your own child if they were struggling with turning something around. And those sorts of repairs with yourself and other people are the only thing that helps us to then reconnect so that we can move on from it, and rather than go around the cycle again.
I hadn't really thought of it because I was weirdly talking to one of my friends who's in therapy at the moment. I mean, I go to therapy, so we talk about it a lot. And he was talking about repair, and he was talking about the importance of it actually within parenting. But I had never put that sort of like on myself as a personal endeavour, that I could have that level of compassion to go, oh my God, I'm being so awful to myself. Stop, pause, what would be better? Because I think that's almost harder than doing it with other people, because we're like, doesn't matter about me. I'm just, chatting negative crap in my head as usual. I'll just carry on with my day. But actually, we need to see that in ourselves, that we deserve a bit of, like, just to let ourselves off the hook, quite frankly. Like, we have good days, we have shit days, and that's just so normal.
And it's the stuff you do with a child or an infant, is you would see if they were distressed or sort of emotionally dysregulated, and then as a parent you would kind of validate that, or you scoop them up and you help them to turn it around or to make it better or to shift their energy state. And we do it for a child, but we don't necessarily do it for ourselves. We just hammer ourselves for not being in the perfect state at the perfect time. And so if we're able to sort of access that compassion that we show for the people we love the most and just redirect it and use it, and so a lot of that work comes from building that self-awareness of, rather than, we're all really good at just numbing, aren't we? Emotions go up and down, mood states go up and down, and we just crush it. We keep crushing it so that we can
Yeah, we're like phone, food, drink, TV, like anything to distract us.
Yeah, coffee, up that energy level when actually our body's just trying to say, I'm really tired.
Stop.
Yeah. So, a lot of it, I think, is that being able to learn how to truly listen to your body and your mind not with judgment that it's not good enough because you're not feeling great, but with the curiosity of, why am I not feeling great? What's gone on? Why is that uncomfortable? And what do I need?
Yeah.
All of those sensations and those emotions are loaded with information about what we need that we're not getting.
Yeah.
And if we're then able to kind of respond to that by meeting some of those needs, then we're well away. But it starts with that willingness to kind of experience it without the judgment, but with curiosity instead of, well, that's interesting. What's that about?
I think curiosity changes the whole direction of it. It's like, because just judging yourself is like, full stop, a dead end. I feel like shit. And actually the curiosity is like, this is quite interesting. Why am I doing this again? Why have I fallen into the same pattern again? I've noticed that myself recently with things that I've been doing or finding myself saying to people. I'm like, how have I not learned this lesson? Like, what am I doing? But this is interesting. Let's get stuck into this when I go to therapy next. Since I last saw you in 2023, so much has changed. I mean, you're going to know a lot more about this than I will, but in terms of science, neuroscience, how we talk about therapy, how we talk about the brain, what do you think you've either learned or changed tact with since 2023 in terms of your work or how you even approach the subject of mental health?
That's a great question. Has it changed? I think it is in the process of changing at the moment, actually, where I'm in kind of writing mode again, and I'm in a different place than I was when I wrote my first book. And so with that first book, I just wanted to get out all of these great little educational kind of sound bites and things that I know had helped other people in different ways. And so I did that, and it was this sort of, easy access, just get all those things out and make them as easy to understand as possible. But in order to do that, it had to sort of miss out some of the deeper, more lengthy, more complicated, harder to accept stuff that can also come in therapy. And so I think I'm sort of moving into that space now where I'm thinking more about how to, because that's difficult stuff to communicate, right? It's really tough.
Yeah.
It puts a lot of, and I think that's probably why I never included it before, was it puts a lot of people off thinking about these things. And I was so focused on trying to show people that might not even consider therapy that there are lots of things you can do to help yourself.
Yes.
And so I kept it at that level that felt acceptable to everyone. But now I'm in a place where I'm less trying to be acceptable to everyone, that I'm more about, okay, there's some other stuff that I haven't shown you.
Cool.
So yeah, watch
that's
this space.
exciting.
Yeah.
And also, I guess your readers, the people that follow your work, they're going to be ready. Like they've read your first books, and now they're like, and what's next?
Yeah.
And I think the conversation, is still a long way to go if we look at talking about therapy, making it more accessible to everybody, the whole conversation. But it feels more in flow maybe than when we first met. It's one of the reasons your book blew up so massively, because it was needed. People needed to have the tips, the tools, and we certainly still do. But it feels like we're ready now. Like, Dr. Julie, take us to the next level. We're here for
I think the trouble is that with, a lot of the like mindset stuff and the kind of things that work fairly quickly is they're really useful in the moment, but without doing that deeper work, they're fairly temporary. So you have to keep work. It's like, I don't know, personal hygiene. You have to keep putting in the work every day and keep updating and doing more of it, because it's fairly short-lived, the sort of impact of it. So the more sort of longer term in-depth stuff can make that more sustainable and make it last longer. But it's a bit more kind of exposing and vulnerable, and you got to be sort of quite brave to go there, I think. Yeah,
brave and definitely disciplined, which no one wants to hear because it sounds so boring. But I've said this on other podcast episodes that I've done, but The shift for me, not that I'm by any means like I've nailed it, but like a big positive shift in my life in terms of how I think about myself more so, because that was not good before, has been the consistency of going to therapy once a week, which I feel very privileged to do, but also dedicating each day to remembering what the hell I just talked about, or any ideas that came from that, or moves that could be made because of what I've just discovered or talked about, got curious about on that occasion. And I think we do live in a world now where we all just want a quick fix in whatever way. Like, I want the shoes, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to eat that thing and then I'm going to get a dopamine hit. Dr. Julie, tell me a tip and then my life will change. And it's actually, it's every bloody day until we die. And no one wants to hear that. It's boring.
Yeah. And people talk about the kind of the self and self-care and doing the right things as I think people can get quite sort of maybe there's a few misconceptions around that, in that self-care is just giving in to your latest whim or your what you want right now, not necessarily what you need right now or in the long term. And actually yourself is more than that thing that you want right now. It's actually your whole life and all of the different areas that you have to show up in and your responsibilities. And so kind of, self-care really is about thinking about your whole life and your future, and then acting in a way that's in your best interest for your future self. And sometimes that's not doing what you want to do either. It's doing the less comfortable thing.
Yeah. And also I think you have to like yourself, right? To bother doing it. You need to believe you're a person of value. What if you don't? So many people will go, I don't believe I'm of any value at all. Where do you start with that?
Yeah. And I think you have to, that's when you don't go for, this stuff online about sort of affirmations that you might not believe in, I am strong, I am lovable, I am fantastic. And that might give you a little hit in the moment, but it's not going to last if you don't already believe it. Yeah. So if you already believe it, but you're going into a difficult scenario, then you can use that to sort of re-engage with it.
So it is a good short-term tool.
If you already believe in it.
Right.
If you're telling yourself something you don't believe, so if you don't believe you're someone of value, but you're telling yourself you are, actually what you end up doing is setting up a little argument in your own head, because your thoughts will go, well, actually, I know different. Here's all the evidence to say that I'm not, and so you start up this little internal argument in your own head about whether you really are or not. And so if you don't believe it, I would say go with the truth. Go with, okay, if I don't feel of value, what's that about? That's really interesting that someone could truly believe that about themselves and could not recognize all the ways that they could contribute or, be of value. And so, I would want to kind of look at that with curiosity again and say, well, okay, if I don't think that at the moment because X, Y, and Z, maybe I'm not living in line with my values and I'm not doing the things that would make me feel that way, then I've got a clear path towards how I work on that. And inevitably, so you can't sit there and convince yourself that you're of value, but your brain can learn through your actions the evidence of what you actually do and how you live. And so you can create a picture of, if I was going to feel like that and believe it, what would I need to be doing? How would I need to be living? What would I do differently? How would I interact with people differently? How would I parent differently or work differently? Or, and really break it down to all of those little things. What would I do when I first open my eyes in the morning differently? And so you begin to look at then why you don't feel like that, as opposed to just trying to squash it and make it not true.
How sensible. I love this.
It's information, isn't it? And
data.
But yeah. And it can even, even if logically it's not true, but you underneath kind of believe it anyway, you've got to tear that apart and work out what's going on. And because, if you squash it, you never get the value of it, of why you're feeling that way. And then you might just numb it without fixing it.
God, that's so interesting. I've never actually heard that being properly dissected, because I think most people are confused. We can watch all manner of content on Instagram, say, or go onto YouTube or whatever, wherever you're imbibing this information. And you'll be told by one person, do a journal, another person, do affirmations, another person, this. But actually, to break it down and go, right, do affirmations, but only if you bloody well believe it. Don't just start flying them out if you haven't got the foundation of, I do believe that I've got values and I am a valuable person to society, to my family, to my friends. And if not, one interesting time to change your life because you've actually worked out this isn't working. I think that's so cool.
And it's really interesting. Sometimes it's about, behavior change of the person, but also sometimes we don't feel valuable because of the way that our society's set up. And so often you'll get that with, new mums, that in our particular society, new mums are not given the recognition or value
support
that they deserve. And so they feel that way, not because there's something wrong in their own brains or because they're getting anything wrong. They don't feel that way because there is no recognition coming at them. And it doesn't mean that job is not of value. It means that their feeling is a reflection of the world they're living in.
Yes.
And so, I think it's really important that we don't turn it into I'm getting it wrong, or it means that I'm doing stuff right. The answer is sometimes action that you're not living in line with your values, and sometimes it's the world is set up in an imperfect way that can be damaging to our mental health.
And also, I guess if somebody has repeatedly told you when you were younger, you're a piece of shit, you're not good at this, that it's not true, but you've been, again, hardwired to believe so. And then that's a chance to go, oh, why do I believe it? It's because that teacher or that parent or that friend used to constantly berate me.
Yeah.
And the work, I guess, there is learning to, unlearn that.
Yeah. And just sort of learning to recognise what, by looking at it and doing that work, which of those things are an echo from the past. And therefore, you're able to kind of let it pass. So it will always pop up, right? It won't disappear. And it's a bit like, I don't know, let's say you smoked from the moment you were able to hold a cigarette. And then at age 40, you decided to change that and give it up. That urge to, get a cigarette and smoke it wouldn't just disappear after a couple of years. It would always be there. That this sort of the associations, the smells, the habits, they're always accessible in your brain because they're well laid down, right? They're well practiced. But what you do is, rather than make them disappear, you recognize what they are, that they're this echo of the past and this past way of doing things or past way of thinking. And then you choose what to do with it, knowing the work that you've done to think about what this new cycle is you want to be doing instead.
Yeah.
So
it's empowering. Like, there's opportunity to change and to make your existence more peaceful, essentially, I think. When you're not berating yourself so much and you understand you're a person of value, that's mental peace, isn't it? Like, whenever I've been through any times of deep anxiety, it's because I've lost that peace. I feel everything's too jumbled, nothing makes sense. And to have, I think certainly as I've gotten older, mental peace is like one of my goals. It used to be make everything as exciting as possible, like sort of adrenaline and all this kind of crazy stuff. And now I just want clarity and mental peace.
Yeah.
Since I last saw you, you've also been through your own personal struggles, and you were diagnosed with breast cancer, which you've talked about on your channels because obviously is a great level of connection you can have with your audience who have also been through something similar or had people in their family, their circle, undoubtedly, sadly, who have been through a similar thing. What did you learn about yourself during that process, knowing so much about how our minds work and psychology? What did you notice coming up for yourself? Yeah,
that probably tested my preaching and the theoretical approach more than anything. And I'm generally quite a sort of private person, and I'm not on socials sharing a lot of my personal life. But the way that it happened was, I noticed this lump. I was about a week away. No, at that point, I was 6 weeks away from handing in the manuscript for Open Web. Loads of stuff going on, school things, all this, polishing everything up. And I actually had the thought, because I'd had lumps and bumps before that had been tested, and I knew it was a stressful experience. I I don't really have the headspace for this right now. Should I wait until I hand the book in before I then go and get this sorted? Long story short, a few days later, I thought, actually, no, I'll call the GP. And I didn't get through the first day, didn't get an appointment, and then nearly gave up again. But the next day, got an appointment and did it. And it turns out that, time was my greatest weapon, because we caught it really early, which was amazing. And that made me think, how many other busy people are putting everything else in front of their own health? And, I've read all the books, I know what I should be doing, and I know what I would advise for other people to do. And yet I still had that thought of, maybe I'll put my own health on the back burner. And so I kind of shared that it was happening, and kind of told everybody to, do the right thing and prioritize your health, because if you don't, it will find a way of coming first eventually, right? So touch wood, I'm all good now, and had the surgery and stuff, but it was a tough time. And an interesting story. So when I got diagnosed, I was a week before handing in the manuscript, and then I was at that stage, I was just polishing off, I was reading through chapters and stuff. There was this process, this sort of moment of limbo almost, where we were waiting for further test results and that dictated what the surgery would be and stuff. So I didn't know really how serious this was or what the future held. And so I'm in complete fear. And I just happened to be, I thought I'd just get this book off my desk, get it gone, and then I can focus on this stuff. And I just happened to be reading through the chapter on when fear shows up. And the whole idea of the book is that when you're in the eye of the storm, it's a sort of letter from me to you to say, okay, if you're here, this is what you need to focus on to get through and out the other side. So it's that kind of, for the people that don't have someone to put an arm around them and give them a good talking to, it's supposed to be that kind of a bit of a talking to get you through. So I'm reading this chapter on fear, when fear shows up. And I thought, well, that's not done it. That's not what I want to hear at all. And it was very gentle and very sort of calming stuff. But what I needed was strong and a step forward. And so I hit delete, rewrote the whole chapter there and then for myself. And it was much more, so the language in it is much more a bit like a coach. So it's like, you're here. You can't change the fact that you're here. Yeah. And in it, I start to talk about the sort of the predator prey kind of mindset stuff, because I felt like a rabbit in headlights. I felt like, I don't know which way to turn. This thing's coming at me, and I've just got to dodge threat whatever way I can, and I don't know if it's possible. And I didn't want to feel that. That felt overwhelming and awful. And knowing about the sort of predator mindset thing, I wanted to get into that place of seeing a goal, putting a step forward, and actively moving towards it. So having a sense of agency, that there was something I could do here. And so I did. I sort of primed myself for that mindset in that chapter. And it helped me a lot. So every time I then read it through, I would follow up with something, an action that was in the service of my own rescue. So I couldn't change the situation. It was always going to be rough. But, I think after I wrote that chapter, I then made several calls to people that I knew to find out names of surgeons, to get a second opinion, to work, because there was sort of dispute over what kind of surgery I needed and stuff. And that changed the game. I found an amazing surgeon and all this kind of, and it was only through having that mindset of, this thing isn't coming after me, I'm coming after it, and it better watch out. And I'm kind of, moving forward and taking my future into my own hands, that kind of feeling. And it helped me hugely. It doesn't mean there weren't dark moments of course. Oh my gosh, how do we tell the kids? How do we do all this kind of stuff? But it felt fundamentally different. Yeah, like
that switch, because I've heard you talk about this before, the prey-predator thing.
Yeah.
And it's applicable to so many situations in life where we feel out of control. Like I'm the victim of something happening to me. Yeah. And actually for you to be able to find that empowerment, that autonomy to go, I'm going to turn the tables here. I've got more power than actually I can see, and I'm going to do something about it. I think that is so game changing for people in so many situations.
Yeah, and I think it's, agency is one of the fundamentals, the sort of core thing about mental health is if you feel that you can't have any sense of agency or effect on your environment, you feel so out of control and overwhelmed and distressed. But as soon as you see an avenue for something that you can do to, in the very least, not make the situation worse and in the most make it better, then your mind has a sort of a guide to follow. And so I think that's a lot of what happens in therapy, a lot of the time when I was sort of working with probably young women mostly, who would come along feeling that I was going to fix them in some way, or that all the things that life could throw at you, they didn't know how to deal with it, or that they didn't believe they could cope. All that changed between the beginning of therapy and the end of therapy, life was still stressful for them and they still had lots of stuff to face, but they just realized they could trust themselves to do something with it. And they, that they felt more confident in their own capacity to step forward, not back, and push through stuff and look after themselves. And so I think that kind of finding agency, and an old supervisor of mine used to say, push it where it moves.
I like that.
A lot of the time we bang our heads against brick walls kind of with distress or emotions and stuff like that. But if we find something, one little door that opens that leads somewhere good, then, go with what works. And it gives you such a sense of sort of control over things.
In a situation like yours, or in other ones where you do feel like you're out of control initially, or there's just big feelings coming up, whether it's anxiety, sorrow, anger, I'm always confused as to how much we're meant to honour those feelings and lean into them versus go, I'm not going there because that's going to make me feel worse. Like the whole theory of whatever you resist persists versus I'm choosing to not torture myself by constantly feeling sad, angry, anxious, whatever it might be. Which one is it?
It's interesting actually because I'll talk to you about a thing that we kind of do in therapy about sort of avoidance and stuff. But actually since the cancer experience, I noticed that of course, as soon as I had my surgery, then it was ready to books being launched, tour, and I was just hit the ground running and moved on. And so in some ways, the whole kind of processing of everything was a bit delayed for me. And I noticed that sort of health anxiety creeping in and things like that. And I also noticed those really wonderfully helpful and important posters that, they're on the back of toilet doors that tell you to check your breasts. I hate them because they always catch me off guard when I'm doing something else. Well, I'm going to the loo, but they've got them in the ITV studios and stuff. And so if I'm focused on doing something or performing or, working, and then something reminds me, remember that thing that happened? It could happen again. And those little things that kind of take you off guard kind of have that huge sort of... And so I notice in myself that I also didn't... Some people are amazing when they have these kind of experiences. They then do massive things for charity and build loads of awareness, and it becomes a massive thing. I couldn't touch any of that, and I felt terrible for it. But now I realise why, and it was because I just wanted to forget about it, and that was a sort of unconscious pushing away of the whole experience. I wanted to move on and be positive and all that, and it's when you start to become aware of the way that you're pushing things away or the way that you're not willing to be there, it's just an indication of probably need to at some point. You probably need to just look at that. And it doesn't mean you have to think of it all the time, or that you have to do a big, if I see a poster and it triggers something in me, I don't have to do it there and then. But it just shows me that, wow, something to think about. And so we do this thing in therapy where we kind of I won't do it because of the mic, but I'll often get a folder and I'll be on one side of it and the other person in therapy will be on the other side, and we'll push against each other, and we'll imagine that folder is all the crap they don't want to have, right? All the feelings, all the distress, all the things you're trying not to feel and think. And all day you're kind of pushing it away and you're trying to get on with what you're doing. And then I'll say, okay, now imagine that's the end of the session and you're going to go about your day, but I'm going to be doing this all day and you've got to try and keep me at bay. And the minute you let your guard down, the minute you get tired, you're going to drop your arm and it's going to come flying and hit you in the face. And that's when you get the overwhelm, right?
That's such a great visual of it.
Yeah. So if I've been trying not to think about cancer for a year and then I see a poster that reminds me, then I'm going to feel overwhelmed because I've been pushing it away and I haven't, done the work. But then what we do is we take the folder and we say, okay, instead of pushing against each other, this time you're just going to hold your hand here and I'll place the folder on the hand. And we say, okay, now, we'll end the session. You go about your day, but you just got to carry it with you. And this time it's not in front of your face. So you can get on with your day and do your things and it's there. But when you choose to, you can look down at it, you can think about it, consider it, feel it, and then get back to your day again.
I love that.
So there's a choice and there's an agency, but you can't have that choice and agency if you're focused on pushing it away all the time, because then it resists and it needs to be felt and processed at some point and kind of put in its place in your own mind and understood. And once you've done that, it feels more like this, that you're just taking it with you.
I love that visual. I've totally experienced that. I used to try and delete whole sections of my past. Press delete, goodbye. It doesn't exist anymore, gone. To the point where I can't remember certain things. My memory's fucked from it. And actually, a lot of the therapy I've done has been looking at certain things properly and uncomfortably so.
Yeah.
But I can now hold the folder, like I'm holding it. And it's so relieving to be in that place. And that's why I feel so lucky that I have access to therapy. Getting onto that conversation, we'd need another week of, the issue for people that can't get to therapy and how systemically that's just a massive issue. We all know that. But I think if anyone out there can get access to it, feels like it might help them, bloody well do it. It can just be completely life-changing.
Yeah.
But I think everything you've just said there is so helpful for people that are wondering, but also are just carrying a heavy load or certainly trying to push something away. I just think that visual is so brilliant. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, and awesome. I think for those people who don't have access to it, having a sort of openness to experience and a reflective approach to that, like, journaling or something like that, writing stuff down. I used to do that before I really knew it was a thing that had loads of evidence behind it as being helpful. I would naturally, I guess because I'm quite introverted, if I was sort of struggling with something or had lots in my head, I would kind of start journaling. And when things were okay, I would never keep a diary. So they're all full of terrible, awful things. No
your
good
life
days.
story for like people in 1,000 years, like this Dr. Julie had such a shit time. Wow.
Where are the good days? And never felt like doing it on the good. But it's a release and it's a diffusion as well. We were talking about getting the separation. When you put everything that's screwed up in your head onto the page, suddenly it sort of unravels a bit and makes a bit more sense. And so if you don't have access to therapy, you can do that kind of thing. You just have to be really careful to keep it constructive.
Yeah.
So, keeping that idea of having your best interests at heart, and because that's what a therapist or a friend would do, is ensure that you're not just ruminating and going down and down and down. And
I've been doing it with my daughter before bed. She's got a little worry book and we write all her work because she gets quite anxious before she goes to sleep. So we do a little worry list every night, and sometimes she wants me to look at it, sometimes she doesn't. And it's just, I think she feels like, she's kind of out of her head to an extent as well. And then I'm sort of learning stuff about her as we go. And it's actually, I should be doing the same, probably doing my own one with her. But there's something so lovely about that, just getting it on paper, out of you, slight separation again from it all.
Yeah.
I can't believe we've been talking for an hour. Christ, I was literally thought we've been maybe chatting for half an hour. I've just looked and it's been an hour. So there's two things that I need to ask you. And the first one is, we're making a happy place playlist and we're putting great songs on that make us just feel really brilliant. What would you put on the playlist?
something that drives my kids absolutely mad at me because I love, if I'm if I'm cooking and like the sun's out and stuff, I will get the windows open and play. Is it Corinne Bailey Ray?
Yes.
A girl, put your records on.
Love.
Oh God. And the kids are like, oh God, Mum. And I'm like, so happy. So yeah, totally cheesy, but
that's a
fun.
great song. I love
Yeah,
it.
love it.
And Dr. Julie, where is your happy place?
Oh, at home with my babies and my animals and watching the sunset. We get a good sunset over the field at home and when you're there and you just think, everyone say, especially when the kids are in bed and I know they're all asleep and they're all safe, there's something about, yes, we did it. We did another day.
We did a day. Yeah. I love that. Well, look, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. This has been massively helpful to me, let alone the listeners. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.